Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining everybody for another Whiskey Wednesday. And we have a very special edition of Whiskey Wednesday. We have Bill and Bob, backstage, the CBOs of Four Gate Whiskey Company. Get to talk to them, catch up to them. It's been about a year since we had Bill on the channel. And this always gives me excuse to drink some Four Gate. I'm going to be getting into the Kelvin 6 here shortly. So if you have some Four Gate, it's time to crack it open, drink along with us. So thank you for joining today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. So pouring a little Kelvin 6. Kelsey and Darrell, I know you're going to be sipping on some Four Gate with us. What are you pouring first? Kelsey, why don't you say hi to everybody? Let us know what you're drinking.
All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, for Whiskey Wednesday. I'm drinking one of my favorites that they put out along with Kelvin 6, but I'm doing the Kelvin 60. That's what I'm drinking. So, as you can see, I don't like them at all. There's only about 15 bottles up there around my head from Four Gate. These guys have been putting out some great whiskey for a long time. My introduction to it, which was several years ago, but it was the Bluegrass Trilogy along with their Boo Rye Split Stave, which has been one of my favorites for a while. So I'm excited to get to talk to them again and hang out, but also just kind of give an update on what's going on with Four Gate. What are they doing? What are they releasing? What are they working on? So we'll get into that a little bit later as well. Thank you guys for being in the chat, 41 of you guys. Darrell, what are you drinking, buddy? Which one are you drinking?
I got a few over here, but cheers everybody in chat. Currently, I have the 4x4 in my glass. I just had a little bit of the Saint Charant. I got a couple others that I'll probably get into later on in the stream. But yeah, this 4x4 is delicious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, man, you say that, Kelsey, and now I think back, like, man, it's been since Kelvin 1 for me. Gosh, what was that now? 2019?
Yeah.
Man, can't believe it's been 5 years.
Yeah, batch 4 was my first one. 4, then 6, and I'm not much of batch 6 right here. Kelvin 2 left, man. It's on the itty bitty.
It's because you've been blending with it. We know what you've been doing with that thing.
This was like, God, I went through so many of these, man. I got to get another backup somehow. I'll find one.
Well, let's bring on our guests of honor here. Let's bring on Bill and Bob from Four Gate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having us. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And by the way, Darrell, that 4x4 is insane.
I love this bottle.
One of my favorites.
Low proof, but like drinks, it just drinks nice. Like everything else, obviously, like they're all cash strength, but this one's like a really nice sipper, great flavor. I'm a sucker for Foursquare. Like these guys know me, so when you mix some good whiskey, finish it in some good rum, you can't miss.
Yeah, I mean,
I always think of 4x4 and Saint Charant in the same wavelength in my brain. I guess they came out around the same time. They're both kind of delicate compared to a lot of the other ones we do. There's little subtleties to it. Just a really nice sipping whiskey. Some of our other ones are really kind of in your face with flavor and flavor upon flavor. And I just, those were a little bit outside of the mold of what we normally do. And I absolutely love them. I did at the time and I still do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like, I think that's like 100. You got the bottle there. If I had one, I'd grab it right now. Darrell, I don't have it. Isn't that like 103 or 104?
Yeah, I think it's the lowest proof you guys ever did.
Proof we've ever released.
Yeah, 103.2.
Yeah, and that's barrel proof again. Bill and I've never added water to our product. That's crazy. Yeah, that's a hell of a bottle.
When you dropped all of those, it would have been what? The split stave, bourbon rye, the Kelvin 4, I want to say.
That's what I'm drinking right now, the Kelvin 4.
And then the 4x4. You released all those at the same time. And I was with a friend when you invited us to the Watch Hill Proper. I think it was for your 3-year anniversary. And you had all those lined out of the table. And I came home with the case and then had to explain that to my wife when I got home. Luckily, I was loaded up on some liquid courage, but that was a great case.
Yeah. You got to leave those in your car until the morning. And then when your wife's gone, you just bring them into inventory and nobody knows. You don't say anything. You don't disclose anything.
I mean, that part is that was when she wasn't drinking. Now he's got her drinking, so
okay, now
down there all the time now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's
a little easier now,
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like riding gear or workout gear. I'm sure it's with Bill with golf and golf clubs. You don't say anything.
Oh,
you just put it,
sorry.
Put it there. Don't say a word. Huddle the wrappers and move forward. Yeah.
That's gotta be in a highlight reel somewhere, right? Of
just Darrell just falling over. I just imagine it was Darrell falling over. Not
my camera, man. If you guys could still hear me. And look, I moved my camera while you guys.
The good news is it's 7 after 8, and you already fell down once. So we're not counting.
Oh, let's see. I only have
Todd. You got some good ones there to start off.
I was going to say, those are some pretty salty bottles there you got there. Those are some really hitters, some big hitters there.
I only got one of the 14-year myself, so I'm jealous. We had so few of them, we only kept one each.
Wow.
I am switching. I just had our Japanese Mizunara Oak, and now I had a Swallow left in there, so I'm switching to the Kelvin 60, which is probably still my favorite.
That'll be the one I get on next, I think. That's one of my faves as well. So we've got 57 people in here so far, just to make sure we're on the same page with everybody. Why don't you introduce Four Gate Whiskey Company to them, just in case they haven't heard about you yet or haven't noticed all the bottles behind me in every single video.
So,
the honors for us.
Sure. So I'm Bill Straub, and that's Bob D'Antoni. We are the founders and owners of Four Gate Whiskey Company. We started the company in 2018, so about 6 years ago, maybe a little over now. 6 years ago, we started the company. Our first batch came out in April, and the whole idea was doing very small, limited release batches, working hand in hand with a cooperage, Kelvin cooperage in particular, finding really interesting ways to barrel finish whiskey. At the time when we were kind of throwing around ideas of how this company would look and how we would be different than other people, there were a handful of people that would barrel finish. It wasn't like we reinvented the wheel or anything like that, but it was always the exception to the rule. And typically, with maybe one or two exceptions only that I'm aware of, it was always somebody's youngest and worst whiskey, throw it in a sherry barrel, let it sit for 2 years, and then sell it for $30 or something like that. But what we really wanted to do was be able to really showcase what oak can do to whiskey. And we wanted to start with the best whiskey, not young whiskey, not underage, not stuff we didn't like in our blends or didn't fit a flavor profile or something like that. So we went out and we made a conscious decision to not distill ourselves. We're not distillers, so we don't have that expertise. It's not in our quiver, so to speak. So we source the whiskey, we blend the whiskey, and we work with Kelvin Cooperage hand in hand to find cool ways to bring new flavors, new flavors into the industry. And since then, I think you've seen a big rise. We've had a couple of national writers give us a lot of credit for kind of changing the way finished whiskey is viewed by kind of the whiskey buying public. I don't know how much we had to do with that, but by and large, I think we've done a very good job, and we were always very keen to make sure that all of our batches are unique. We only have one product that's available year round. That's our Split Stay by Kelvin. Everything else we do is a one-off. So if you don't get it when it's out, you're probably not going to find it unless you search and hunt in backwoods stores. But that's kind of who we are in a nutshell.
All right.
Yeah, no, it's been a great ride, and I'm so happy Bill asked me to participate and do the company with him. And We bought some great whiskey to launch the company back in 19. In November of 18, I found some 11-year-old Kentucky and called Bill. I said, hey, man, I found our first lot that we're going to buy. And we met the broker, had some samples, and pulled the trigger on 25 barrels. And then we went to Kelvin, and they just got in some sherry rum barrels in the inventory. And they invited us down to come look at them. And Bill and I went down there and looked at them. And first thing Bill said was, man, these barrels smell like peanut butter and jelly. Let's buy them. And so we bought those barrels, and we finished that first batch, Bill. When it went an 11-year-old, right? The 11-year-old.
It was 11 and a half years old.
That we kicked off with. And we got just over 1,700 bottles. And we did the release party in April of 2019.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
we do put out around anywhere from 4 to maybe 6 or 7 releases a year. We do have the one standard release that's available year round, that split stave, and that's a 7-year Kentucky finished in our unique split stave barrels. So split stave barrel, cool visual. It's we essentially, Kevin will make 2 sets of barrels. One is a medium toast, and one set is number 2 char. Before we use them, they take them apart, put them back together, alternating those staves, so it looks kind of like a zebra inside it. But it kind of gives you a little bit of a toasting, light double, little more double oak, kind of pops the bourbon flavors as well. And that's our standard release. It's available year round, slightly lower price point than all of our other ones. But everything else we do is a one off, and you know, we try to be creative and different on everything we do. And you know, we just have, if it's not fun, we're doing it wrong. And if the whiskey, even before we finish it, doesn't taste good, then we're not going to use it anyway. So we make sure that the underlying whiskey is great. Try never to over finish anything. If you want something that tastes like sherry, go buy a bottle of sherry. It's really cheap. Otherwise, you know, we want to give you really good whiskey and just maybe introduce a few other hints of flavor and little pops of flavor here and there by using finishing to fill in the gaps, basically.
I didn't think people drank sherry. I thought they just used it for barrels.
Some sherry is only used for barrels, but there's some people out there.
Well, the finishing sherry in Spain, it's not very good. You would cook with that, but the sherry in Australia, and we brought in some of those Apera sherry barrels that Bill and I've used from Australia. That's actually drinkable sherry. What we've had before in the Kelvin barrels, we got like 8 Oloroso barrels, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. And we went down to look at the barrels. And like, it looks like they left a lot of sherry in there. Bring them across the Atlantic Ocean. And then float them over so they didn't dry out, even though it was winter. I mean, we must have dumped out. I went to Home Depot and bought 4 pickle buckets. And they were all full, and we were filling 750s that Kelvin had on the side to empty them all out. We finally emptied out 8 barrels of Oloroso. They were that wet. And so, you know, if you're not looking at it on the front end, like Bill and I do, you're going to ruin your whiskey if you don't dive in there and see what's in there, smell it, understand it. And if there's a lot of juice in there, you got to dump it out. Now you can add back a fifth or whatever if they're that wet. But if there's more than that, you need to dump it out. Otherwise, it's going to destroy the flavor, the profile. You know, it would ruin our whiskey.
We prefer the barrels to be damp, but not absolutely filled with sherry or anything else.
What's interesting, I think you were guys, when I was over in Australia, 98, 99, they were just really starting to kick off all of the vineyard stuff for their wineries in regards to that. But it's pretty interesting how much other than just wine is coming out of there that is being used in the U.S. right now. But some of the barrels that you guys have picked for some of those releases have been absolutely stellar on the finishing side.
We try to give as much credit as we can to Kelvin Cooperage. They really work so well for us and with us, and just they won't let us use something if it comes in and they don't like it. If there's an odd smell or they think it's too dry, they'll just flat out tell us we're sending it back. You can't use this, which we really appreciate. I mean, that's those folks know more about barrels than I could learn in a lifetime. So
It's
Yeah,
been,
and I've only bought Bill and I bought some barrels from small rum distillery out of Richmond, Virginia, and a couple others, different barrels that we've bought. The Madeira that we used on the Kelvin 6, and a couple others. Bill wanted to got my hands on some Armagnac and some brandy barrels that we finished whiskey in, but we haven't released it yet. That's in holding tanks. But we bring those barrels in without Kelvin. They still go to Kelvin. They still check them all out. They pressure test them. They make sure that they're good. If they got to do anything to them, we pay them to do that and pressure test them and confirm that they're still good, that we can ship them to BBC to put our blend in there.
yeah. Bill or Bob, can you discuss what makes Kelvin barrels so good? Are they getting harder and harder to buy now? I know that there for a little while people were talking about the barrel shortages going on, but obviously when you're working with that type of a cooperage and having the type of relationship, can you talk about, how, I know you've talked a little bit about how picky they are, but I mean, talk a little bit about their barrels and why they are seem to be so much better sometimes than other.
The only thing I'll add on this, because Bobby's the real expert on this one. The only thing that I'll add is that the way they work with us is it's almost like having a barrel concierge. You tell them what you want, tell them where to get it. They'll bring it in, they'll check it over, make sure everything's good before you ever see it. And I just think that's having someone who does that as part of their business model. They care enough about their customers and their clients to do that is a huge difference. It just really is. You can treat a barrel like a commodity. I'll give you X number of number 3 char barrels for this price. Or you can work with the customer and say, hey, you said you wanted this. Have you thought about doing something a little different? And that's the way I see Kelvin being different from our standpoint. But I think Bobby's the barrel speaker and whisperer here. So let's let.
Yeah. Well, and from those guys bringing them in is one thing, but like what Bill mentioned earlier, right before we went live with the rest of the group, was how much he likes the Kelvin 60, which is the 8-year-old that we finished in a 2 char barrel from Kelvin. So we'll send in the work orders to BBC. And what we like so much about Kelvin is they'll talk to Bill and I and say, when are the barrels going to be filled? When can you pick them up? When do you need them? And we're like, well, we're scheduled. Let's just say we're scheduled to have them filled next week on Wednesday or Thursday. Said, okay, have your driver pick them up Wednesday morning. Tell BBC they can be filled on Wednesday. And Kelvin's literally going to have them done Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning. They're picked up and they're filled 24 to 48 hours later. On all of our single barrels, all the split stave barrels, I would say, if we've done the single barrel program 4 different years in a row now, and then we've done the other burr rye that Jarrell mentioned earlier, batch 4. I'm sorry, not batch 4. The Burrell, the
19.
19. Yep.
But it was the red label bottle.
Yep.
That one, and then some of the other ones that we've done with the split staves, all those are filled almost instantaneously. Yeah, that's it. That's it, Jeff. And so that's really where Kelvin comes in. We got a window so tight where somebody else, if you're ordering, I don't know, 500 or 1,000 barrels, Kelvin's making them. They're freighting them over to you in the 18-wheelers. You're bringing them in. They may not get filled for, 3 weeks or a month. That would probably be a normal timeline for a new barrel to be filled, in theory, from a small cooperage like Kelvin. And we have the luxury between the way Bill and I have it set up with Kelvin, with BBC, and prior to our previous company, and our driver, to have that done almost instantaneously to meet their.
I'll also add that there's a difference, I think, and this is my personal opinion. Other smaller craft cooperages probably do too, but they don't use natural gas to burn their barrels. They use charcoal when they make the lids. The ends that they cut off, they just throw in a kiln, turn it into charcoal, and they shovel it into the barrel. And the way I liken the difference, people say, well, what difference does that make? I say, think about your grill using charcoal versus natural gas. There is a difference in smell and flavor of that barrel. There just is. I've smelled barrels that come straight off the line at the big cooperages, and I've smelled them that come straight out of Kelvin, and they smell different. Yeah. They just do. And I think it matters. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. We had great whiskey from other barrels too. So
we were at Kelvin last week with a group of there must have been 14 or 15 people, women and men that wanted to see it. A couple of people had seen it before. It was the rest of the folks that were with Bill and I, and they were just blown away that all the fires are white American oak scrap wood, and there's no gas in the cooperage at all. It's all natural fires, and it just sets it apart. They do everything. Everybody knows about Kelvin now, from Bill and I talking about it and really exposing them more over the last 6 years. But Kelvin does everything on feel and smell. There's no timers. So whether they're doing a medium plus toast for us, which is probably 20 minutes without catching it on fire, or if it's a 2 char that we did for Kelvin 60, we got some other whiskey right now in 1 char, in rejuvenated 1 char barrels that they recommended. We got some other whiskey in some 3 char barrels that Bill wanted to try about a year ago. We wanted to do a little bit extended finish on that, and that was his suggestion. And Paul McLaughlin and William Hornaday made it happen for us. And Clayton is the manager in the back of the cooperage. Clayton's great too. He does a lot of that work for Bill and I as well.
See a comment over there for you, Bill.
Gotta love family. Oh goodness.
Well, you talked about it a little bit off the top here when you were talking about Kelvin 1. The one thing that always sticks out with me when it comes to Foregate and Kelvin 1 in particular, that was like a crazy time in the industry. If you go back to 2019, when I think about that exact time period, it's this weird moment where bottles that retailed for 100 were once selling for 150 on secondary, and suddenly they become 300, 400. Like the prices on secondary just seemed to go crazy. And then I found Foregate on the shelf, and when I tasted it, I was like, oh my God, this is wonderful whiskey. Why would I have FOMO about anything else? And it kind of broke me of that entire habit of chasing anything. I was like, oh no, I don't need to chase things that are expensive and maybe expensive because of prior batches even. I can just be in the know of the new brands that are coming out, be in the industry, hear these brands, and just search for those. And those tend to be more findable sometimes even. And that fell in love with Foregate and kind of led to the numerous releases behind me. But that was now 5 years ago. So you were talking about it a little bit backstage, Bob. I mean, you've gotten to see this industry change in the 5 years that you've been in it. What are the lessons that you've learned? What have you seen change the most? Curious on your perspective.
Well, I'm going to let Bill take most of this question because he was doing it beforehand with his blog, Modern Thirst. And but we for sure were on the forefront of all this finishing whiskey. There was some out there. The difference now is, 5 years later, is we're still using premium whiskey. We're not doing blends from 5 different states and using staves or wood chips or spiral cut, wood pieces to drop in the barrel to finish it. we've only used full barrels from Kelvin, whether it's fortified wine or rum or what have you, or new barrels from Kelvin to finish our whiskey. We've never done anything else. And we've always, and Bill said earlier, I think it might have been off stage, so I'll repeat it. We only want to use whiskey that we like before it's finished, that it can stand on its own. We've used 6-year-old once in a couple years ago on the single barrel program that we finished that. And matter of fact, we did 6 and 7-year-old that summer. And a lot of people like the 6-year-old better than the 7. Other than that, we've done all of our finished whiskeys have been between 7 and 14 years old. We got some more 14-year-old that we're going to release and some other things, but I'll let Bill, Jeff finish up on the finishing part and the different casks.
Yeah, I think the biggest changes I've seen is in, I was in the office of a bourbon. Everyone know, I don't want to throw his name out there, but everyone knows who he is. And he told me 2 things. He said, no one talked about cooperages before you guys. And he had the president of one of the big cooperages in his office saying, how come nobody talks about me? And he said, you guys don't have a 4-gate. You don't have a 4-gate in your corner. He said, how come everybody's talking about the McLaughlins and not me? And so I'm very proud to hear that, because I feel like our company wouldn't exist without Kevin and Paul McLaughlin from Kelvin, the owners of Kelvin Coopers. Kevin passed away a few years ago, but it wouldn't exist without them. So I 100% want to make sure that they get all credit due to them, that they're fantastic people running a great company. The second thing is just like Bobby said, I think we helped, other people did as well, but I think we very much helped bring finished whiskey out of the closet, so to speak, where people just wouldn't touch it for the longest time. They just thought it was garbage. It's, it's not authentic. It has to be nothing, no other wood can touch it other than New American oak. Otherwise it can't be bourbon. And I agree with you. It's not bourbon. It's bourbon finished in other barrels. And if you don't like that, you certainly don't have to buy our product. Maybe we're not for everybody, but if bourbon is so sacrosanct and you can't touch it, then what is Scotch? Because Scotch has been around forever. And you ask the rest of the world, that is the tip top of whiskey. They use every cask in the world to age that. And that really all we were trying to do was introduce American premium whiskey drinkers to the fact that you can have other flavors in the whiskey that come from barrels. I'm not pouring a bottle of sherry into a barrel of whiskey and selling it to you. We're using an authentic sherry barrel, a full barrel. Like Bobby said, we never use wood chips. We don't use staves. We try to do everything the right way. We're as upfront and transparent as possible. And I think a lot of companies have followed our model to some degree since then. A lot of people barrel finish now. Even the big guys, they barrel finish all the time now. That just wasn't a thing in 2019. You might see 1 or 2 a year. Yeah. Obviously, Midwinter Night's Dram was the one exception that was around in 2019 that I know of. There was a premium finish whiskey, and I think Beam might have done their
signature.
Yeah, they might have done one for a charity release or something like that. But yeah, but you weren't finding a 9, 10, 12-year-old whiskey, American whiskey, a Kentucky straight bourbon, for goodness sakes, that anyone would put into another barrel. That was just considered a no-no. And I'm very proud of the fact that I think we were at least one of the companies that helped change that discussion, open some palettes, so to speak, to some new ideas.
Yeah, and a follow-up to that is, when we get the cask from Kelvin, we on that batch, we may double fill them. If we've only able to get like 3 or 4 barrels or whatever, we need a little bit larger batch. We'll fill them. We dump that when it's ready. Bill makes the final call on that 99% of the time. And then we'll fill them again. We know it's got to go a little bit longer. And then we're tasting the base juice, the first finish, the new finish, and how's it going to be, and make sure it's right. And do we want to dump it now or wait another week or 2? Where if you look at some of the other ones, and I've been there, I'm not going to say the brand because it's so relevant, but they were one of the first companies that started finishing whiskey for their namesake. But when you go in there and you see their barrels, they got 15 different chalk marks on it. They've used that time and time again. Those aren't new barrels. They're not bringing in new barrels to finish that whiskey or to finish that rye. It's going over and over and again. So either they're letting it sit in there a lot of time, or they've got that barrel and they're reseasoning it every time after. And we're not doing that. Bill and I've been transparent. Like we've got barrels that, like when we did our Mezzanera and the Ambarana, we've got those. Those are good. We got them. We're the first time use, and because we use Kelvin, they said, "Hey man, bring the empties back to us. You've used them once. We'll rip the heads off for you, spin them down, and rechar them, and you got a brand new barrel again." And they're not going to do that for everybody, but William and Paul will do that for us. We've had that relationship from them, and we bought the barrels from them, and we told them we probably want a second use out of them. Would you rip the heads off, spin them down, and rechar them for us? And they said, yeah. So, those barrels cost a fortune, as you guys know.
How big of a difference is it spinning them down? Like, are there any specific batches that you did that with? I just don't know if it's like a big difference in taste.
Well, we haven't used those barrels again. We did it on. We haven't released it. We did it on some Kentucky whiskey that we bought, and we bought rejuvenated barrels. We had them spin them down, and then they did a one char for Bill and I because we didn't want to modify the profile as least as possible because we liked the way it was. But this also has to go back to what you were talking about earlier, Jeff, on what you saw change in the market. And what changed in the market about now, it's probably been 2.5 or 3 years, is the TTB changed the rules on an age statement, that it can leave the original barrel of bourbon or rye going to another finishing cask that is oak. It doesn't matter what it is. As long as it's oak, probably 98% of the barrels out there are oak. The age statement continues. Now, with that being said, we've got acacia barrels. We haven't used them yet. We know that's hardwood. We've used Ambarana, and we even put it on our label that it's Ambarana Brazilian oak. We know it's hardwood. Oak's accepted for that, but that would not carry the age statement if you were trying to carry that on that. We've got some other whiskey that we finished, and Bill and I bought some. Now it's probably been 1.5 years ago. That was 5 or 6 years in a finishing cask. They did that unbeknownst that the TTB was going to change the rules. So when we bought it, it was literally over 13 years old. We let it go, and then we double finished it into some dark rum, and that juice is 14 years old. That's the
It's also almost hazmat.
Yeah.
You may have a sample of it right there.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's pitch black.
Looks
It's
pretty
valid.
dark when you held it up.
I would think with the Mizunura, though, that would probably not be a good thing to be able to leave something in Mizunura for that long, unless it's like a third or a fourth fill. I would imagine. I mean, it seems like that particular oak can very easily take over a whiskey pretty quickly.
It probably could. Now, one of the things we have going for us in that regard is that we do everything barrel proof. A lot of folks will release something at 100 proof or 95 or something. You're very, very easily going to overpower something at 90, 95 proof. But we're very careful. Bobby and I call it overcooking. We don't want to overfinish anything. Like I said, it has to start out as good whiskey, or we're not going to use it. And the blend has to be good. If we do a blend on a micro scale, if we don't like it, we're not using it. So we have to like the whiskey first. And second off, I don't want to give you something that tastes like the finished barrel. I don't want it to taste like new whiskey that went into Japanese Mizunara. I don't want it to taste like sherry. I don't want it to taste like port. Because, again, you can go out and buy sherry and port for a hell of a lot cheaper than one of our bottles of whiskey. So by all means, if that's what you want, go do it. We're just trying to round out some flavors, add some flavors to already really good whiskey. That's why we call our unfinished bourbon foundation. because we think when we put that out, we think we found something that is so good. We just want everyone to try it. So we consider that whiskey to be the foundation of what we do. It has to be good whiskey first. Everything else is secondary. If we can't find good whiskey, we're just not releasing it. I mean, it's, that's just, we're not cutting corners on anything we do. And we're not letting quality suffer for sales or anything like that. It's not really in our bones, and it's not the whole point of the company.
Yeah. Hey, Kelsey, I'll give you a little bit to follow up on Bill a little bit more on the timeline of stuff. And Bill picked this on the flagship of our whiskey. We've done 2 different batches of it. Basically, it's the same in the split stave barrel, 7-year-old Kentucky, 75, 20, and 5. And he chose on the first batch, let's do 45-day finish. So we're as close to 45 days on that flagship on the first 2 releases of it. And when we repeat it again in 2025, it'll be as close to 45 days as possible. And then my additional comment I wanted to give you on the Mezzanera and the Amberana, we had those first samples at like 9 or 10 days, and we tasted them at my house. We could have dumped it in 9 or 10 days. We literally we tasted it 1 more week. Then we gave the work order to BBC. We get in their queue for their work orders, and they said, it's going to probably be about somewhere between 28 and 35 days. We said, dump it whenever you can. So, I mean, you were asking if it changes the profile that quick? 100%. You taste the base juice after about 10 days when we got those first samples back. It was insane how different it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's interesting too, the differences of those particular casks and versus a Madeira cask or a rum cask where you are able to let it set, I would imagine, quite a bit further. Just how much of an impact that it can have depending on the region that it comes from is one of the things that you guys have done so well that have been so impressive for me is all the different casks, but also blending those particular casks together and coming up with a profile that is balanced and still maintains the backbone of the whiskey, right? It seems like that's getting harder and harder to do for people that aren't solely focusing on what you guys are focused on, which is following everything and doing everything to the nth level, is that you get some finished whiskeys that are way overcooked, like you said. But one of the things, my favorites, is that Burai split stave. I don't know what you guys did on that particular one, but man, that's always held a safe and close place in my heart because I've been there through that bottle for a while.
Well, thanks. We appreciate that. Hey, I wanted to add a comment to that, Kelsey, but I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to let Bill answer it because you brought the Madeira cask right there in that last comment.
Yeah,
those are some of Bill's favorite casks. I was lucky to find those outside of Kelvin. That's one of maybe 4 or 5 barrels that I found in 6 years that Bill and I've used. But I'll let Bill make the comments on the Madeira.
When we started the company, I wanted Madeira. It was something I had always kind of earmarked as something that it was just a goal of mine. I think it's the best bourbon finish in the world. It gives you everything that port gives you and everything that sherry gives you, and then adds a kind of a tart cherry note to it that neither one of them can give you. And I absolutely adore it. We just never kind of came across any of them. Bobby found some. And here's the interesting thing about us with Kelvin is even if Bobby finds it, Kelvin brings it in and they check them for us. So they'll tell us. There's been more than once where we brought in barrels and they just tell us, nope, send them back. They're terrible. So we don't bring them in. They don't go straight to, we do all of our operations at Bardstown Bourbon Company. Nothing goes straight through them barrel wise unless Kelvin's checked it over first. So we finally found these ones. We got them in. They gave us a thumbs up. And that's the Calvin Collaboration 6 that who's got that up here? Was it Kelsey or Darrell drinking that?
Yeah, I just got it. I just got it as well.
Yeah.
Jeff, I just had to go get my bottle.
There you go.
Got
the split stave.
Thanks for reminding me.
It's one of the very few I haven't owned.
Oh, I haven't had it in a while, and it's blowing me away tonight.
I know. I hide it behind the other ones because it's my favorite, and maybe if I don't see it as much, I won't drink it as much. Because I know whenever we were doing the last time when Bill came on, we tasted 1 through 5, right? Is that what we
1 through 5?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
And it was just amazing to taste the differences from 1 through 5.
I forgot we did that tasting. That was fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And just seeing the progression and the differences between each of those particular blends and hearing the stories behind each one as you guys are going through it. What do you think is probably your biggest challenges that you guys face right now in going forward through 2025? Like, what are some of the things that you see in the industry?
I think it's twofold from my perspective. Number one, the market in general has just been kind of terrible for the last year, particularly for higher end whiskey. So we constantly have to be out making sure that people know who we are, get a chance to taste it. We feel like when people taste our whiskey, they tend to buy it. That's just kind of the way it is. So that's probably our biggest challenge. The second challenge that we have is we don't have a tasting room of our own, and that's both from a just having a place to host people and do barrel picks. We don't have that on our own. We do use several different places around Louisville. That's fun, but it's also a source of revenue that we don't have at the moment. So we're kind of exploring some options in that, and hopefully sometime next year we'll have some announcements or some ideas of what we will be doing going forward on that one as well. But for me, I think that's probably the two things that I look at is just the overall market is challenging. And I think everyone's aware of that right now. And it's not just bourbon. It's every spirit, wine, beer, liquor. Everyone's, these kids don't drink anymore. And somebody's parents need to tell them to pick up the bottle.
Well, there's also, that article was in online probably 5 or 6 months ago now. I mean, in the state of Minnesota alone, there's 4,000 stores, whether they're CBD stores where you can get flour or gummy, or whether it's a 7-Eleven or a liquor store that you can buy CBD drinks. And in the state of Minnesota in 2023 did 200 million in sales.
Yeah.
So all those dollars that are legal dollars in marijuana or marijuana, derivatives, that all takes away from, wine, craft beer, rum, tequila, our whiskey, everybody else's whiskey. And then you also hear, to add to what Bill just said, I mean, Brown-Forman's latest quarterly report was they think everybody is downsizing or downgrading from the Jack Daniel's 5th at a $26 or $27 bottle to drink a bottle that's $12 or $13 and move into like an Evan Williams or, something else that's at the lower end game. They're going from 27 down to a $12 bottle. So
I think we are starting to see a little bit reversal of that. So for the last 6 months, I think people were going for the bottom shelf, cheapest stuff they could. I think the economy was finally, inflation in particular was just catching up with people. Yeah. But I have been talking in the last week with several people who are saying that it's starting to creep up. You're starting to see some gains in that $45 to $60 range. Yeah. It's starting to pick up there just a little bit, just a little touch of hope there. And it'll trickle its way up. When we first came out, we do everything in such small batches in the rebarreling. It's insanely expensive the way we do it. We didn't plan on being a $200 bottle. It just in order to do a basic margin that everyone in the industry does, it was a $200 bottle on the shelf. When we came out, we were one of the most expensive bottles in the liquor shop. We are not now. There are 15 bottles you can find 15 bottles, go into any liquor store in Kentucky, you find 15 bottles that are $300 plus, and you won't find a 4-gate at that range. So, we won't be the last ones to see the big bounce back, but we're not going to be the first. So we know that we've got some things that we're working on, and probably, hopefully mid-January or so, we've got some ideas that we're hashing out and looking at some possibilities of what we can do to just kind of make sure that people know about us and can get a hold of some of the stuff we do.
Now, speaking of spaces, I know of a space that's available with about, I don't know, several hundred barrels that you guys could purchase and take over and have your own space.
No, thanks.
I wasn't going to go there, Kelsey.
Very good folks. Don't want to be involved. Don't want to get in the middle of that.
Does it rhyme with okay?
It's really sad, to be honest with you, to see that happen. But no, I think it's interesting what you said, and from you guys being a premium whiskey, and we had, we were talking about it before the show last week. We had Aaron from Smoke Wagon on and talking about his different products and being an MVP and a little bit, obviously what they do than you guys do. But he was interested to see like where what products are moving right now for volume. It speaks to exactly what you just said in regards to what people are purchasing. I think, I work in the freight world every day. We're seeing a slight uptick already. And I think as January rolls around, you're going to see things kind of loosen up. I think the economy is going to loosen up a little bit more. And I think you guys will see that. But it's interesting that you mentioned the CBD, because our local stores just started releasing the THC, the derivative that's a hemp derivative.
Delta 8 and Delta 9.
Yeah. So
there you go, blowing our surprise. Delta 9 gate. Now the surprise is gone.
Right.
But they've really done a lot of sales with those particular sodas and gummies and stuff that are legal, that don't require a card and don't require anything as far as recreational, uses.
Well, I know Kentucky has taken that up, the Kentucky legislature, so it's almost certainly going to be regulated in Kentucky, just like alcohol soon, which will probably make it a little more expensive.
January 1st, though.
Yeah. But one of the things that has to be said about it is that you can buy those things that have 0 carbs, 0 sugar, 0 calories, and you can get intoxicated on it. And I know that today's youth and America in general has started a health kick in the last few months. And that's a big part of what's happened to the alcohol industry is America is just trying to be healthier in general. It's harder to do when you're drinking alcohol as opposed to 0 carb, 0 calorie seltzer water with Delta 9 in it. It just is. And that's just the way it is. But there's always something out there that's a competition, if it's, whether it be cigars or cigarettes or tobacco or vaping or something like that. And, the industry is going to adapt and survive. And it's just a question of how it looks when you come out on the other side. So that's all it is. It's we got to figure out that it's an industry, the way forward, and we'll figure it out.
No, I totally agree with that. It's interesting to hear different people's perspective on what they see day to day. The other thing I was going to talk to you guys about was upcoming. You said you guys I know there was another label that released at the TTBC coming up from you guys. Did you want to talk about that at all, or?
I don't know if we can talk about that one, Bob. The one up in the other state.
Be limited out of another state, so we should probably hold off on that. If they read the label, they can they'll get more information. Let us go through the process with this third party that Bill and I and Fourgate are working with, and it looks like it's going to happen. And Bill will put a blog out on it when it happens. It's going to be extremely limited.
About 2 barrels worth, I think, of whiskey to start with.
Yeah, out of a different state. The good news is they ship to Kentucky. They ship to Florida. They only ship to like 4 or 5 states in D.C. But anyways, it's going to be very, very small. Once it comes out, you got to order it or it's all going to be gone in their state. It'll be gone in
same day.
Bill and I think it'll probably be gone within 2 to 3 weeks.
I think it'll be less than that, but knowing depending on when it releases. But man, it's you guys have really helped cultivate a sense of authenticity, transparency, and just, I've heard several people talk about it to me. They're like, what do you do with all the Foregate, or why do you buy out Foregate a lot? And I said, well, number one, it's great whiskey. But number two, I would much rather save my money than buy two $50 bottles or three $50 bottles and buy one premium bottle that I can share with people over a course, and that's one of the things that I tell everybody that tries Foregate is like, it's worth what you pay because of all the stuff that they do to ensure the quality of it. And I think that you guys have done a great job of maintaining that quality for all the time that you guys been in business, which not a lot of people can say that, especially.
I appreciate that. I do.
Yeah.
I also appreciate the comments on transparency and authenticity, because that was a big part of when we were starting the company. One thing Bob insisted on was we have to be transparent as possible. We have to tell everyone we can't, no lies. And I, my background is I started a blog, and then I got into some consulting for some national brands. And I really felt dirty doing that, because they would bring you in. They already had the name, they already had the backstory, and they already had most of it. I'd help them blend a little bit, but they already knew the story, and it was always fake. And I hated that. I hate it. Don't tell me this is your great grandfather's recipe when you're a multinational conglomerate beverage company, and this is coming down from corporate. It's not even from the distillery in Kentucky. It's from the parent company overseas. Don't tell me this crap, So we were very keen on not resurrecting. I don't have anything against it personally. It just, I couldn't authentically go out there and try to push a label we had resurrected that died in Prohibition or something like that. Just personally, it just wouldn't flow for me, and I couldn't be authentic about it. So we wanted to make sure we weren't passing off someone else's label, someone else's work. And we, if there's something we're not telling you about the whiskey, other than who distilled it, because we're literally not allowed to do that. If there's something we're not telling you that you need to know, please let us know. I mean, we try to say everything we can. We tell you how many barrels go into it, and what the proofs are, and what the mash bills are. And we tell you the states and everything. And I mean, by and large, you can look at our website and you can figure out what's in every one of our batches. There may or may not be a mash bill chart on a website that someone here may have owned starting in 2012 that has most of those mash bills on it too. Just saying. So you could even find out who distilled them through things like that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, Kelsey, I wanted to add to it was on that label that you're talking about. We did, I think we did probably 5 different blends here at my house, and Bill decided on the final blend. I mean, I was pretty close to where I wanted it, and then I had them all made up for him, and he decided on the final blend. And then we've tasted it with, I don't know, half a dozen people. We sent it over to these guys that are buying it, that are going to produce that bottle in that small quantity. But Bill made the call on the what the blend was going to be. He's Bill from the very beginning, and we've done this on a couple other batches. We've got it going right now with this one and a couple more that are in tanks. Bill's always wanted to have 200, 300, 500 gallons in tanks of finished whiskey that we don't have something specific for, that we can still work with everyone. And this is an example of what we got. We have, these guys are buying a small portion of it to do this release. And I think we're allowed to say that, in that Bill picked out the blend, and we've got more of that to do that we'll probably end up releasing from Foregate locally in 2025. Just these guys wanted it. I sent them 3 different samples of stuff that we have in tanks, and this is one that they picked, and Bill was the one that blended it for us.
Very nice. I'm just excited to see a new label from you guys. No matter when it releases, it's always fun and to see what you guys are going to come up with next and what's on the horizon. We've got about 55 people left in here, 6 minutes left to the hour. What else did you have, Jeff, that you wanted to ask them?
I got one more statement, and then I got a question here. But I will say your attention to detail has always impressed me. Now I inspect other labels looking for the nuanced difference between dashes and signs. Never thought of that before 4Gate.
Yeah.
But-
That's a Bobby call on that one. That was one of the best things we ever did. That was Bobby.
That started at the beginning of
We were talking about a little bit though. It sounds like you got single barrels is what you're concentrating on, and you were kind of talking about those backstage. Anything?
Yeah,
you want to say about those?
Our single barrel program is in full swing right now. We did about 10, 11 barrels in the last 6 months, and we're kind of testing some different things. So we just pulled a group of barrels from a couple different distilleries in Kentucky. They're both 10 years old. Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. We give you a couple different finish options. We are working on a possible platform or plan that would allow groups and independents, not really chains or big liquor stores or anything like that, but more for on-premise and small groups to do a half barrel of a private barrel. So instead of the full, whatever it is, you would commit to maybe 12 or 15 gallons. So there may be two people out there with the same essential underlying barrel, but they could choose a different finish. But we kind of started thinking we're kind of missing restaurants because, restaurants they don't need 120 bottles that cost $2.25 a piece. I mean, they just don't. So we're trying to find ways to fill in some of those gaps, and that's something that we're talking about now and trying to figure out how that's going to work. And I think it could, if people have interest in that and they're in states where they can do it, that we're distributed in, reach out if you have questions about it or if you have interest in it. That's something that I think that we most certainly will do in 2025. But yeah, we're having a lot of fun with single barrels. Right now we're doing, you can pick a number 2 char and double oak it. Last year was 3 char, but we're going to do number 2 char, I think, going forward, or California red wine barrels. We had one customer pick a California red wine barrel last year, and I'm going to tell you right now, can I say the F word here? It's fucking phenomenal. I mean, it is. I love it. We've never done just a straight up red wine barrel, and it's my favorite of the single barrels that came out last year. So thrilled with that. And also, we're not opposed to being creative and playing around with the single barrel program. It's just a matter of filing a label. If someone has an idea of or has a relationship with somebody and wants to use a certain kind of barrel, reach out to us. We'll see what we can do. I can't make promises, but again, if we're not having fun, we're doing it wrong. So let's see what we can do.
No, that's awesome.
Try something. Let us know. We'll let you know if it's possible or not.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, it's Bill and I get to make the decisions. So that's the good news. We don't have to,
we don't have a board of directors. We don't have a stockholders.
You're talking to the world headquarters. So
I'm excited to hear that. I know Jeff is too, because he was grinning from ear to ear as we were like, yeah, half barrel, let's do it. Let's do something fun.
Yeah, and if we don't know the exact gallons, what we can do is let's assume it's a normal barrel where we're going to get 20 or 25 cases. Let the first person take 10 cases and the second person have more of the risk where they may get 2, 5, 10, or 15, whatever. Right. We've done it the other way, maybe 2 or 3 times in 4 years. And a couple of times the guy on the second end got like 3 or 4 cases because the guy in the front wanted okay, I'll take 90 bottles or 15 cases. And they were a little bit light barrels. So if they're not like 25, if we're not getting 25, because we got to do all the labels and the neck tags for you guys too.
Yeah, right? The awesome fiddly bits is like.
Exactly. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep, we're doing
those tags, by the way.
So we just want to know. We just want to let you know that, that's how it's going to roll. And like Bill was saying, gallons. When we dumped one in BBC this summer, the guys came back to Bill and I and said, hey, this barrel this guy picked was, there's like 6 gallons in it. Do they want it? So we went back to them and they said, yeah, we'll take the light barrel, but then we'll buy another one too. Give us another one that's not light. We'll take that one. So they took that light barrel and then they bought another one too. And they knew they were only, I think they got 4 cases. It was even lighter than what they thought.
Wow.
I think the bottom line for me is that we're not set in stone on what we do. The only thing that we cannot do for you is don't ask us to give you an unfinished barrel. We have some whiskey that is in our program that by contract cannot go barrel to bottle. It has to be finished, and that was conditions on getting the whiskey. So that's the only thing we can't guarantee for you is it will just give you a straight bourbon as a single barrel. But if you've got ideas on barrel finishing and if Kelvin can find the barrels or you have a contact to get barrels, you own a brewery, anything along those lines, let us know. Let's have some fun. The more fun and more creative we can get with stuff, the more fun Bobby and I have, for God's sakes. I mean, we would love people to come to us and say, hey, let's do this. Yeah. Okay, great. I'd love to do that. It'd be fun.
You gave me a devilish thought, Bill. Was that Pabst Blue Ribbon that showed up where they let it touch oak for 1 second and then they dumped it, right? Do you remember that?
I do.
So could you do that? You could take an 8-year, dump it for a second.
What you do is you dump it, and you ask them to dump it at the end of the day, and say it's a 1 day. It was 1 day in Fort Char.
Don't give them ideas, Bobby.
Add it to the age.
Don't write checks we can't cash, buddy.
We need an encore to come too.
On this stream, man. We don't know what's going on.
That's awesome. I know that we'll be in touch about that. Especially the single barrel program. As we go into 2025, it looks like we've got 47 left. We'll wrap it up here. Thank you again to Bill and Bobby for coming by and talking Foregate. Always a blast to hang out with you guys. And I just wish we were all in the same room drinking whiskey that you guys have. But I'm sure that'll happen at some point soon. So
yeah. Let's get together soon, man.
Absolutely. I know at least one of you and two of you have been in my basement or my house. So all three of you
it's my turn to go next time.
All right. I know Darrell's been here.
Hey, you're welcome to come here. It's crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just turned on the lights earlier, and one of the bottle lights that I got. Let me turn this around for you and let you see some of that. If you can you see that?
There we go.
And then
nice. Looks like a Top Dog lamp.
Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
At the end of the stream when people are taking you on a tour of their bourbon room.
Yeah. I'm not leaving. That's two of the other four walls of the tasting room.
Next time, take us to the billiard room, Bobby.
Yeah.
There's a comment on the I saw that on the chat about that, and then I laughed out loud. I had to mute myself. I was laughing out loud.
I can't see the chat right now. I have to go back. Hey, no, but when you guys are back in, then let's just come here, and then we can go somewhere else and have some pours.
Okay. Sounds good, man. Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much again. Thank you guys to everybody in chat who's hung out with us. We are going to be starting Advents coming up in 1 week, 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And so you guys that are involved in the Advent challenge, make sure you guys get ready for some tasting challenges, because I'm sure Jeff has put in some fun whiskeys for us to try. So
awesome.
It'll be a lot of fun.
Hey, well, Darrell, Jeff, Kelsey, thanks, guys. We really appreciate it. Thanks for having us on.
No, absolutely. It's our pleasure. We always love hanging out with you guys.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers, man. Thank you, guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, everybody, it's that time of night. Go check out Jason over at the Mash and Drum. He should be going live now. I believe he's got a baseball theme. Something like that.
Baseball theme tonight.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to go check that out.
Go check him out, and we'll catch you on the next Whiskey Wednesday.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.